I will do my duty. This tragic Allegheny tale takes us back to 1943 in southern Somerset County, Pennsylvania, the town of Meyersdale, where young William Atwell Miller was determined to carry out his patriotic duty as an American. Let me set the stage for our story. By 1939, the United States had witnessed the destruction of civilian life and property in Europe, caused by the invasion of the crazed dictator Adolf Hitler and his German war machine. President Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order on May 20th, 1941, creating the Office of Civil Defense. This order requested the cooperation of all municipalities to carry out the civilian defense program. This was enacted in June 1942 by the Meyersdale Borough under Ordinance Number 114. The program was operated by civilian volunteers, providing food, shelter, first aid, fire protection, and a list of other services in wartime emergencies. Supervised by the U.S. Army, a round-the-clock observation post located on top of the borough building allowed for the listening and visual spotting of enemy aircraft or airdrops of men and supplies. The Boy Scouts were selected as civil defense messengers. All defense programs were operated from the Meyersdale Borough building, and a civil defense warning siren was atop the Citizens National Bank building. Later, 4 more sirens were located around the borough. Similar civil defense programs and observation posts were set up in most every town across the country. The threat was real. German submarines were spotted and had already sunk ships off the Atlantic coast. Enemy planes were designed with the capability of flying greater distances to drop their payloads of destruction, and there was Hitler's top secret weapons being engineered that could be used to threaten and panic our civilian population. Blackouts were one countermeasure designed to hinder the enemy's capability and literally keep them in the dark. For example, blackout curtains were a way of life in the American home during World War II. It allowed your family lighted living space at night without being detected by enemy eyes. Fines were imposed against violators of civil defense laws. A devoted Boy Scout by the name of William Atwell Miller, who everybody called Billy, was a civilian defense messenger. Boredom was not in the vocabulary for this 12-year-old youth of Meyersdale. Billy was the son of Carl and Lula Miller of 201 Grant Street. His siblings were younger brother Ted, sister Carolyn Bell, and an older stepsister, Elaine Spiker. Billy was bright, energetic, and likable, assisting in civic and church activities, and would lend a helping hand to anyone in the neighborhood. As an avid reader, especially about technical books and aviation, Billy had his heart set on being an Army pilot someday. But until then, in his spare time, he was content building model balsa wood versions of Uncle Sam's defense aircraft. Billy could also name and identify most every airplane built by military contractors. Because of his enthusiasm for airplanes, a benevolent relative arranged for Billy to take a plane ride with Martin's Air Service in Somerset. What a dream come true. A new year was unfolding. It was Thursday, January 14th, 1943, and a cold winter evening had settled over the town of Meyersdale. The Miller family were all in bed, and perhaps Billy was dreaming of flying a bomber plane over Europe. Into the late night air, the civil defense siren shrieked its piercing sound into the ears of the town's inhabitants. The alarm was part of a statewide blackout. Billy's brother Ted remembers the two of them sharing a bed. And when the siren went off, Billy leapt from the bed, dressed, and rushed out the door to carry out his duties as a civil defense messenger. We're here along Business Route 219 in Meyersdale, Pennsylvania, and I'd like to welcome to our episode 90-year-old Ted Miller.
Hi up.
He was 9 years old when this event took place in 1943. Ted, in 80 years, Meyersdale has changed a lot.
Oh, it sure has. There's just
Can you tell us where your home was?
I can do that. You see the wall of the building there was one end of where the house was. It ran from there over to about where that brick pile is, brick post is. That was about the size of it. There was a porch that ran along that edge of this house. And I'd say the house was about 20 feet deep this way.
On that January night of 1943, when you were awakened by the alarm of the civil defense siren?
About 10 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
And as far as I can remember, there was no snow on the ground.
Okay.
But it was a winter evening.
I'm sure. January had been cold.
January 12th, 13th, 14th, somewhere in around there.
Can you retrace his
I can do that.
trace?
We're very near to where the steps came off the front porch.
Okay. And so Billy exited the front porch?
Yes.
Okay.
He came through the door, which was right in this area, out the door, right across 219.
Okay.
And he was running up this rally, probably at a pretty good pace.
In the darkness.
It was dark.
Total darkness.
Well, they called them blackouts. We had to turn out all the lights in town. And there were lanterns hanging on the ditch, which we will soon approach. Evie Dungus, who owned the power plant, was up here turning out his lanterns.
Edward Dongus, an air raid warden and owner of the Meyersdale heating system, upon hearing the blackout alarm, stationed himself near an excavated 6-foot deep ditch lined with red warning lanterns along Clay Street. The ditch contained exposed pipes where hot water and steam were escaping. Back then, most of the large business buildings in town were warmed by piped-in steam heat from one central heating plant. In compliance with blackout regulations, Mr. Dongus extinguished the red warning lanterns lining the trench.
Steam lines went on up the street, branched out, and heated all the businesses in downtown Meyersdale.
After Billy left the house, was your family all awakened by it? Were you?
Oh yeah, we were all awake. We were in bed. I hadn't gone to sleep yet.
Okay.
But we were in bed because school was at school the next day.
Sure.
I do not remember a lot after that.
Billy Miller, en route to the Borough Building, took a shortcut from his house up an alley to the intersection of Clay Street. Mr. Dongus, hearing the lad approaching the trench, attempted to stop Billy. Billy shouted, "I'm a messenger and must get to headquarters." Jumping the ditch, Billy slipped and tumbled backwards into the trough of scalding steam and hot water. Mr. Dongus, rescuing the boy from the pit of torment, wanted to take Billy home. Billy exclaimed, "I'm all right," wrestled loose from Mr. Dongus and continued on his way. Adrenaline rushed him on. At the intersection of Main and Center Street, he passed Police Officer James Brock. Billy, realizing his physical peril, returned to the officer and said, "I'm sick," and collapsed into the arms of Officer Brock. Not knowing what had befallen Billy, swooped up the dutiful boy and carried him to his home. At Billy's home, Officer Brock finally saw the severity of the boy's injuries. Emotions tugged at the officer's heart as the brave little soldier suppressed his tears and bore the excruciating pain. Local physician Dr. John Wenzel was called to the Miller home. Ted, Billy's brother, said he and his sister were not allowed to go into the room where his brother lay. On Friday the 15th, Billy's condition grew worse, and he was moved to the Wenzel Hospital on Salisbury Street. On Saturday the 16th at 3:00 p.m., Billy died of second-degree burns and shock. The day grew dark with grief. I am at the Union Cemetery in Meyersdale, where a large entourage of mourners followed members of Boy Scout Troop 142. who carried their beloved friend to his final resting place. I believe the 12-year-old William Atwell Miller, a dedicated civilian defense messenger, was Somerset County's first civilian fatality of World War II. The model P-51 fighter plane that Billy handcrafted was enclosed in his coffin. Billy took flight as he always wanted to do. "70 years later, in 2013, we soar above this heart-wrenching story with an undying devotion and love by Brother Ted Miller, who created the Billy Miller Endowment Scholarship Fund at the University of Pittsburgh Johnstown campus.
There you go. You haven't been forgotten.
If you are from Somerset or Bedford counties in Pennsylvania and meet the financial requirements, you may receive a scholarship to further your education from this very generous endowment. Students from Meyersdale and Salisbury, Pennsylvania will receive preference. Because Billy's life was cut short, he never had the opportunity to open his mind to the doors of a university. Now your future education can be enriched through the Billy Miller's legacy. Thank you for watching Tales of the Alleghenies.